Monsters and Adventure! Time out, y'all. Listen, remember when I was telling you guys about the magic that my brother Rob and I had experienced in Picker Forest? Well, just like I told you then, that shit changed our lives forever. Not one day has ever gone by since then that we haven't thought about the fact that there is more to this life than the naked eye can see. Even in my gangster mode of life, I've always been fascinated with the beyond. Just knowing that there is a beyond has made us always search for it and reach for more. And to this very day, we continue our quest. No matter what I'm doing in my life, whether it's rapping, wrestling, thugging, rich or poor, I always keep exploring the beyond until all of my questions are answered, which means I'll be exploring forever. So far in life, I've been lucky enough to actually witness some unexplainable shit. Some I've already told you about, and some shit I didn't. I just want to take a time out to tell you guys about some more of this crazy shit. And if you ain't interested in this, then just skip ahead a few chapters and jump right back to the regular story. I would have just slipped these two short little ditties into a regular chapter, but they don't really fit into the storyline we've been going by so far. So I just wanted to throw these in as a freestanding little bit of flavor. The bottom line is, with both these little stories I'm about to tell you, they are without a doubt part of who we are. So I put them in the story of the book. The first story I gotta tell y'all is The Road. As I was growing up in Berkeley and Oak Park, kids were always talking about this crazy road up in the northern part of Michigan. Man, the stories were straight out of a suburban legend. People said everything from an insane asylum to a slaughterhouse full of mass murderers was all on this wooded, dark road. All kinds of crazy shit. The stories made this 9-mile stretch of dirt road out in the boonies completely terrifying. They said nobody had ever driven all the way down it without having to turn around. They said there were hard to see chest razor-high wires strung up through the woods to catch trespassers, and it was rumored also that if any lunatics escaped from the insane asylum, the caretakers would set the woods on fire all around them to trap them in. The stories of the road were totally out of control, and yet no one could tell you exactly where it was. We heard these terrifying stories about the road all our lives, and all we wanted to do was see it for ourselves and see if it lived up to the hype. Right before my brother went into the army, we found out by accident where it was, and we organized the ultimate adventure. We not only were going to make it all the way down the road, but we're going to walk down it on Devil's Night. Devil's Night is pretty much just a regional Detroit thing, I guess. It's a crazy celebration of violence and evil that has been around as long as I can remember. Every year on October 30th, the night right before Halloween, people just burn down abandoned houses and buildings all throughout Detroit. They commit crazy illegal acts of terror all around the city. I've always assumed it was a nationwide thing, but once I started touring, we learned it wasn't. We trained for a month by going out to the train tracks on 9 Mile and Ferndale every night. We'd run down the tracks as fast as we could at the trains, not trying to trip. Then we'd jump out of the way at the last minute. Or sometimes we'd lay on the gravel in between the two tracks as two giant trains went by in opposite directions. It was the scariest thing I can ever remember doing. For the mission, we rounded up 8 of the greatest adventurers we knew. Some we hadn't seen since grade school. We had Joey, Nate the Mac, Don, and a couple other kids. All these kids were geeks, losers, and nerds in school just like us. A couple were people my brother knew from playing all them role-playing games over the years. These ninjas weren't invited to any Halloween parties or anything like that, so they were all down to do it. They were all kings of adventurers in their own world, just like us. October 30th, Devil's Night. We put on our best camouflage ninja hookups. I even painted my face like a warrior of some sort. My brother drove us all out there in my mom's car, and it was going down. And believe me when I say, the road lived up to its name and lived up to its hype. It turned out to be far different than we could have ever imagined. In the days that followed our great adventure, my brother Rob wrote a journal completely documenting everything that had happened on that night. So for now, I'm gonna hand the story over to Rob, and he'll explain the adventure with the help of his fresh journal. Plus, nobody can explain the magic of the road better than Rob anyway. That night was all his idea, and it was the greatest adventure of our lives so far. The Road, as told by Jumpsteady, aka Rob Bruce.
The greatest adventure that I've ever been on involved a road, but not just any road, the road. Some of y'all have read about it in ICP's autobiography, Behind the Pain. Now this road, when we were growing up, it was the stuff of legend. Kids talked about it from as far back as I can remember. And there was rumors that abounded about the road. Some said there was an insane asylum on it. Others said that it was impossible to drive all the way through it and survive. And others, I remember one of the tales was this guy was driving down the road and he basically pretended his car broke down to spook his girlfriend. And then these lunatics dragged him out of the car and killed him. Those were the kind of legends that as a child, they just sparked my interest to no end. And I vowed then and there that at some point I would encounter and defeat the road. As the years passed, I basically kind of forgot about it altogether until I was about 17 years old. One day my friend Matt Hampton came up to me and he was all crazy excited and he was like, "Rob, you gotta check this out. Last night we went down this crazy ass road. It had an insane asylum on it. It had a cemetery. It was fucking wicked as fuck." He was like, "You gotta check it out." So I was like, "Oh hell no." And all of a sudden, all those stories came up from my childhood and I started remembering all the stories about the road and I was like, could this be it? I was like, no way. So I was like, all right, check this out. We gotta go down there. It's time for a ninja mission. We're gonna walk that bitch. Walk that bitch. Walk that. So we set the date, and of course, it couldn't be anything other than October 30th at midnight, Devil's Night. So we gathered the strongest warriors that we knew at the time from our crew. People that we knew would be a super asset to help us survive. So we gathered my brother Joe,
right here,
Joe Usler,
yep,
Steve Lindholm,
what up,
my boy Don Lichto, Jim Symington,
here,
and Nate the motherfucking Mac.
Yeah.
Now we decided that we would each bring one weapon, with us. So people brought everything from a moose bone to bow and arrows. You know what I mean? So we were like ready. Of course, I had the staff, which is my weapon of choice. We had about a month to prepare for the road. So the whole time we were in school, that's all we could fucking talk about. It was like whoever would listen to us, we were telling them about the road and what we were gonna do, how we were gonna freak it. And finally, these two kids approached me and they were claiming that they had been to the road. And I was like, at first I was skeptical, but then when they started describing it, there was way too many similarities. Like there was no doubt in my mind that they had been there. And they told me there was a monastery on the road full of monks. And the monks there, they don't like anybody to go there to fuck around. Anybody that comes around their property, they'll attack them. And they have shotguns that shoot rock salt. So they told us the story about him and his boy, were down there fucking around. And they seen the monk monastery, so they pulled their truck over and got out and they started walking toward it to investigate. Suddenly they said they heard this whistling because the monks, they took a vow of silence, so they can't talk, so they communicate by whistling. And they said they heard whistling, and then shortly after that they heard the shattering of glass coming through their truck. So they ran back there to check it out, and that's when they got blasted by rock salt from a shotgun by these monks, and then they got beat the fuck down. So they were so enraged, they said that, man, they were like super pissed off, and they continued the story. They actually went back, found one of the monks' vehicles and trashed it and flipped it and all this other shit. Anyway, we were like, man, that only intensified the situation. You know, most logical people would be like, oh, fuck that, I ain't gonna fuck with that. We were like, oh, that's awesome. Awesome. You know what I mean? Awesome. You tell me there's fucking these evil monks like patrolling the road and shit. We were like, man, that just made it all the hyper. It was like living up to the legend, you know? So anyway, it finally came to Devil's Night, and we all piled up in the 69 Oldsmobile, this big ass fucking car with a V8 rocket engine, and we rode down there to the mouth of the road. Now, when we got there, we pulled into the woods and we camouflaged the car. We basically took all this foliage and we piled it on top of the car so that, you know, nobody could see it or find the car. And then we stood there at the mouth of the road. Now, all of us were totally camouflaged the fuck out, even the face paint. And we all had weapons, and we were in full ninja mode, and adrenaline was just surging. It was midnight, and it was completely dark, and we're just looking down at this long-ass fucking tunnel that's before us, just immense in darkness, and the wind is shifting, and you hear, like, loons in the fucking woods, and these weird animals and shit. And, you know, being from the city, we're not used to that, so we're looking around like, oh, shit. You know what I mean? And, but we were ready. We were fucking more than ready. I think our whole lives we were ready for this moment. So we started walking into the woods. Now, the first thing that happened to us on the road was we heard a CB going off. So when we heard the CB crackling, you know what I mean? Like maybe there's like a lookout or a caretaker, you know, basically watching the road for like people like us that are out there like fucking around. So we ran into the cemetery. And I remember like the first thing I did was like we all kind of slid behind gravestones, and we sat there and we were like completely still and silent. And we looked around and we were like, all right, look, check this out. I was telling everybody, we're just gonna wait here. We're gonna wait here until we see if the cops come or whatever, and we're not gonna fucking move, because we were like way deep in the cemetery. And I couldn't help but look over at the tomb. There was the catacombs that was sitting in the middle of the cemetery. It was this big foreboding building. And I remember the story my mom told me about how she used to go there as a kid and knock on that door. And, you know, it was rumored they wouldn't survive if they did that. Anyway, probably about 10 minutes passed, but it seemed like 3 hours as we sat there waiting. And nothing happened. No car came, no nothing. So finally we were like, all right, come on, let's go. Now, walking the road is much, much different than driving it. It's, you just feel unsafe. You feel exposed to all the elements, and like anything can happen at any time. And the woods are so dense and so dark that it's as if like if somebody was hiding in the woods, they could just reach your arm out and grab you. Like you would never see them coming. So the whole time you're like looking constantly back and forth, you know, over your shoulder, like expecting anything to jump out at you at any time. So you like, needless to say, we were gripping our weapons super tight, like white knuckle tight, as we proceeded forth, because we were super cautious. Now the next thing that we came upon was the insane asylum. It was actually lit up. There was lights shining at various points throughout the woods. Like they were probably about, let's say 50 feet apart. And so there was this fence that ran along the road on the left side that housed the insane asylum grounds. And then on the other side of that fence were all these lights just in the middle of fucking woods, you know? So we came upon this conclusion, I don't know if it was justified or not, that it was probably an insane lunatic had escaped. You know what I mean? And that's why they had it lit up, because they were looking for his ass. So that compiled with all the rumors from the past got us really amped up, so we quickened our pace to get past the insane asylum, expecting any moment for an insane lunatic to jump out at us. We crossed past the insane asylum. Luckily, nothing happened. So then, the next thing we saw was what can only be described as an old, ancient World War II bunker. It was shaped like curved, like a big curved building. and it must have been a part of a farmland because there was a barbed wire fence that ran in front of it and bales of hay stacked up on the side of it, like a big hay pile. But it was so dark we couldn't see any houses or a farmhouse or anything. It was just this old ancient building, a structure. So I said, look, I'm gonna check it out. You know, I told everybody I'm gonna check it out. They're like, all right. So I hopped over the fence and I started walking toward it. And that's when something huge moved in the darkness. And I looked up, I was like, my mind started flipping because I couldn't understand what I was seeing, but it was this giant form suddenly moved to face me, and I'd seen its eyes glistening in the darkness, and it was huge. So I looked at it, and then my mind started registering what it was, and I screamed out, "Boo!" as loud as I could, because all I saw was these fucking horns. So I thought the thing was about to charge me. It was this giant fucking beast in the middle of the woods in the darkness, you know, just in this, like, by this building. And I thought it was about to rush me, so I started running. And I flipped over the fence like, I don't even know how I did it. It was like a ninja flip. Like, my adrenaline was going so fast, I was just like, "Pah!" And I was over that fence. Anyway, we started looking to try to see what the fuck it was, and it ended up, it was a fucking cow. Now, I didn't know this, but, you know, being from the city and stuff, but, like, some cows have, like, these small horns on their head, you know? So once I determined it was safe, I kind of went over the fence again. And then the cow was, like, moving slowly away from me. That's when I started hearing all the moo sounds coming from all the cows that were packed in the infantry-style building that they were in. So I got real close to it and looked at it, and it looked like there was like 100 of these cows just all packed in there. I mean, maybe that's an exaggeration, but there was a lot of fucking cows just packed in there. So I went back to my crew and I said, look, test the bravery. If we're gonna survive the road, if we're gonna be able to continue this mission, we have to fucking test ourselves right now. We each have to walk through that barn. So they were like, all right, bet. So we all hopped the fence. We went up to the fucking the structure, and we started to slowly walk through in the dark, packed with cows. Now, it's no easy task because, like, as we were moving through, we started disturbing the cows, and they all started, like, moving around and try to get out the building. So as we're, like, walking, you're kind of getting battered by these giant bodies that are moving in the complete darkness, and we didn't have no light. That's another thing I wanted to mention. The whole time of the road, it was a strictly no light policy. We didn't have flashlights, we didn't have nothing. We were in straight up ninja mode. Like, we didn't want to give ourselves away. So we're like walking through this barn, and these cows are shifting, and we're like sinking in shit and mud, and it was crazy. So finally, the cows all strung out into the field, and we were like, they were mooing like real fucking loud, causing a big commotion. And, you know, and basically spanning out, like, try to imagine like 100 cows all fanning out into the field, and they're all mooing and you know, just like getting as live as cows can get. Suddenly we seen this light come on from a far distance. When the light came out, we could see the porch, and out of the porch, we see this door open, and this man steps out onto the porch with a shotgun. We were like, oh, fuck. Let's get the fuck out of here. And we all started running. And we were like, come on, we gotta get over the fence. Now, in the darkness, running, I didn't see the barbed wire. Like, I couldn't gauge where exactly it was at, and I ran smack into that bitch. And I caught one of the barbs, like, right between my eyes, like, just at the apex of my nose. And it just, bam, like, I saw, like, this sharp, like, white light for a second. And next thing I know, there was blood dripping down my nose, in my face. And I saw, like, one of my other boys, he started up the pile of hay, and all of a sudden he just sunk right in the middle of the hay. Boom, he just disappeared. You know, just like a soft spot in the top of the hay, and he was just disappeared. So at this time, everybody's kind of like panicking. And eventually we made it all over the barbed wire fence, and we ran down the road for quite a bit. We finally got off to the side of the road, and we started catching our breath. And at that point, people wanted to go back. They were like, man, fuck this, you know, this is too much, you know. So I remember it was at that moment where my brother stepped up and he basically gave this really elaborate speech, you know, like a super motivational speech. No, this is our time. Why are we gonna go back now? We have to fucking school this and survive this, and you knew there was gonna be dangers. What did you think? This is gonna be easy? This is what a test of a ninja is all about. Surviving this road, like right now, right here. You know what I mean? You're just gonna go back and fail? And he was just like, fuck that, and he was just getting all worked up. So when he gave that speech, everybody it kind of inspired everybody again, like my brother was always real good at that, like hyping people up, like, you know what I mean? So, of course I stood by him, you know what I mean? They're like, man, you're all fucked up. You're bleeding from your nose and shit. And I was like, man, this ain't shit. There was no way, no question. There's no way I was going back. So we continued further down the road. We traveled about a mile or so more down the road. And we were coming across this bend in the road, and that's when we heard it. It started really far away off in the distance, almost like outside of your hearing range. And it sounded almost ghostly, and it was a whistle. And when we heard that, we all stopped, and in the back of our minds, we're like, did we just hear that? And then all of a sudden, closer, like that whistle was like off to the left, and all of a sudden off to the right and closer, we heard a repeat whistle. And when we heard that, I swear to you, the blood in my body just froze. And it was at that moment when I realized all the rumors about the road were true. To me, everything that was spoken was true. And we were being hunted. That's what I realized next. That those whistles, and they kept repeating on each side of us from all angles, were the monks in the road. And they knew we were there, and they were actively hunting us. So I remember I looked at Don, and I was like, my mind, like being a role player, like sometimes I can shut off fear and like think. I can kind of step outside of myself. And I looked at Don, and I said, Don, man, repeat that whistle, so they think we're one of them. You know what I mean? And so Don went up there and he did some kind of bullshit whistle. It sounded nothing like what they were doing. And so when he did that whistle, all the whistling stopped. And there was complete silence, save for our heavy breathing and the crickets. I told everybody, man, get your fucking weapons ready. This is it. You know what I mean? We were ready. We felt like they were going to come busting out of the woods at any second. So we started to pick up our pace, you know what I mean, moving down the road, and that turned into like a jog. We started running. I just gripped my staff extra tight, and we're running down this road, you know what I'm saying, and looking around, and just like there's nothing though, no whistling, no nothing, just silence. So we ran, I'm not even sure how long it was, maybe like 5 or 10 minutes, when we finally started slowing down. And when we looked behind us, all we saw was a wall of darkness. And we didn't hear any whistling. So we stopped and we were like, be quiet, be quiet, be quiet. And we just really listened as close as we can. Now it was at this time, as we stood there on the side of the road listening, that I looked over, and through the trees I saw a light emanating. So I looked at my boys and I was like, that's it. That's the fucking monk monastery. It's in the same area, like straight up. We're right on top of the monk monastery. We left the road and we started cutting through the woods, and we came upon a barbed wire fence. So we hopped that, went about 10 more feet, another barbed wire fence. So we all hopped that, and we kept going real quiet as we possibly could be. And when we got close to the wood's edge, we all dropped down and started low crawling all the way up to the edge of the woods. and we looked down. Now, the monk monastery, the stone building with the jagged edges, the jagged rooftops, was all lit up. And there was a clearing, like they had cut all the trees around it for about 100 feet in all directions. And it was in the middle of this field that kind of bowled down. So the monastery was at the base of this bowl type effect, like the land sloped down toward the middle. It's kind of as if a big meteor hit there and left a big crater. But that's kind of how it was, but it was like grass. And it sloped down, and there in the middle was this stone monastery, huge. And the tops of it were jagged points, and it had vines growing up the sides of it. And there was a gigantic window. It looked like a giant church window in front of it. And there was a little shed along the side of it. And so we looked down at this monk monastery, and as we watched, we can see through the giant picturesque window, there was some sort of ceremony going on. There was a monk in a brown robe, and there was a man in front of the window. And the man was standing there with his head bowed, as the monk looked like he was blessing him. And the man was just dressed in normal clothes, like jeans and a t-shirt. You know, but he was like kind of bowing there, and the monk wearing the full-on cowl with the hood was like blessing him. So we were like in awe as we watched this, and clearly they couldn't tell we were out there. I mean, we were like far away from where that was happening. The only reason we could see it is because inside the window were like hundreds of candles that were all lit. So we stood there and watched it for a while, and then finally the monk and the man left. And I told everybody, I said, test the bravery. They were like looking at me like, oh shit, not again. And I was like, look, everybody's got to go down, and we got to at least touch the monastery. Like, if we don't do this, we're fucking straight up bitches. I was like, you got to do it. So they were like, all right, bet. So I started down the hill, and I low crawled all the way down that bitch. Now, this is even before I joined the army. But I'm gonna tell you what, man, I was like the best low crawl you ever seen. You know, stay low to the ground, and it was sloped down, so it was pretty easy actually to slide down the hill. And I got all the way down to where the shed was, and I stopped and I looked, and I was listening to see if anybody was in there. And I didn't hear anything. So I kept low crawling all the way up to the building, and I touched it. And then I started hightailing it back. Now, as I was going up, I saw everybody else coming down. Like, when they seen like I had made it safely, everything was good, they all started running down, like not even trying to fucking front or low crawl or anything. And they just went all the way down to the base of the monastery. And I came back up to where, close to where the barbed wire fence was, in the same position, and I got down and I was watching them. Now these motherfuckers, man, they were running all the way around that bitch, looking in the windows, and you know, just like no fucking care at all, you know what I mean? I was like, oh shit, you know, what the fuck are they doing? So then, after about a couple minutes of that, like just kind of like everybody going crazy, losing their mind, everybody started running back up. So when they got back to my location, they all kind of plopped down, they were out of breath and everything. I was like, whoa, what's going on, man? What are you guys doing? And everybody had a story. They're like, oh man, it's fucking crazy. I fucking looked in. I think it was Don. He was like, I looked in, I seen this fucking monk. He was walking down the fucking hallway butt-ass naked. I was like, get the fuck out of here. He's like, yeah, man, he had no clothes, just walking down the hallway. And then another guy was telling me he looked in his window, and there was a bedroom, and there was a monk praying on the edge of the bed naked. So we like, get the fuck out of here, man. What are you talking about? It was like, yeah, and everybody had all these stories, like monks walking with the brown robes on, the whole nine. So we were like, all right, man, let's get the fuck out of here, you know what I mean? So we started crossing. We crossed the one barbed wire fence. We crossed the second barbed wire fence. We got back to the road. We started walking like quickly. We were feeling a little bit better because we went all the way around that monastery. Like, it wasn't shit, and we didn't get attacked. Nothing happened. We hadn't heard the whistling, you know, in a long time now. So we're like, all right, we're fucking good. So we started crossing down the road, and all of a sudden, we started hearing these fucking shots, and as we heard the shots, you just hear like these pellets, is the only way I can explain it, like these pellets ripping through the dense wood, like popping off of tree trunks and splintering small branches and cutting through the leaves and shit. Like, it's just, it was weird. Like, it had this fucking crazy weird sound, and it sounded like it was coming from all around us. We just heard this popping and these shotguns going off. So as we heard that, I looked back and I said, run, as loud as I could, fucking run. And we started hauling ass because we couldn't even tell where it was coming from. And we just all started running as fast as we could, just like straight down the road, like the same direction we were headed, you know, just running. Now, as I ran, there was a small path that crossed across the road. It was like I guess a four-way intersection. And as I ran past that, I looked off to my left as I was running. Now, this path, this small path, went down a ways, like maybe about 50 feet, and it opened into this clearing. And in the clearing, I saw about 4 or 5 pickup trucks in a circle on the edge of the clearing. And there, standing in the middle of the clearing, were these monks. A group of monks, all dark in the, you know, really dark in the darkness, like almost like silhouettes. And they're pointing guns at us as we're passing by and shooting. So the reality of that image of them standing there in the clearing, that will forever remain in my mind. Like, I will never forget that. It was one of the scariest moments of my life, and you know, it just felt like we weren't gonna make it. You know what I mean? I really felt like at that moment that we were done. And so we kept running, and my boy Steve Lindholm got hit in the leg, and he started screaming. I guess his momentum, the adrenaline was flowing so hard that he just kept fucking running, and we were trying to help him. We were like, come on, come on. And he was all in pain, and we just kept running. So we ran and we ran until we were almost out of breath, like completely exhausted. And that's when somebody yelled, car! And we looked back, and sure enough, coming down the road from the same direction we were running from, we saw a set of headlights that were coming at us. So we all ditched to the right side of the road, and we got deep into the woods, and we dropped down. And we were trying to be as still as we possibly could, even though we were all breathing heavy. And then I was looking, and sure enough, here come the pickup trucks. The same ones that were in the field, slowly creeping down the road as if they were looking for us. And as they passed one by one, you can see in the back window there were gun racks where their shotguns were nestled, and their rifles were like nestled onto these racks in the back windows of the cab of these pickup trucks. Now, the amazing thing was, right at this moment, I look over, and there's Don Lichtel standing up, notching an arrow into his bow as he's watching these pickup trucks slowly pass by. Now, one thing I want to tell you about Don Lichtel, like, I've seen this dude stand up. He's an Hawaiian dude. He stands about 5'6" tall, and I've seen him stand up against muscular 6'4" ninjas in high school, like talking mad shit, like ready to fight them. So he was standing there with his bow and arrow, and he's slowly pulling the bow back. And there at the tail end of the convoy of pickup trucks is one pickup truck that is just tailing behind, and it's a big gap between the rest of the convoy and them. It's moving slower than the rest of the trucks. So we're all standing there watching Don in awe, when suddenly he comes right up to the side of the road and unleashes the arrow, almost at point blank range. Next thing we saw was the window just shatter as the arrow goes through and embeds itself into the passenger seat, narrowly missing the monk that was sitting there. The driver throws up his hands in panic, and the next thing we saw was the pickup truck swerve off to the side of the road and bam, hit a tree and come to a stop. Now, when that happened, there was a few moments where we're all kind of looking at each other. We're looking at the pickup truck, and all of a sudden this rage just overtook us. And we all got up almost at once, and we started rushing the truck. Now, by the time we gained our wits and started rushing the truck, they had already opened the driver and the passenger door, and they started running through the woods. So we gave chase. Now, I didn't make it very far. We kind of split up because the two monks ran in two different directions. And one group was following the one guy, I was following the other guy. Next thing I know, I entered the woods, and I probably only made it maybe 5 or 10 feet when all of a sudden this branch just caught my eye, just like poked me right in the eye. So I was all in this pain. I kept running for a little while longer, and bam, I hit a bush or some shit, some underbrush, and it just totally knocked me off my feet. So as I lay there in pain, I'm like hearing this echoing of these voices deep in the woods. I hear my brother and my friends cursing out these monks, and I hear them shouting like, "Oh, he's over here, come on," and just shouts echoing through the woods, just mad chaos. So anyway, I found out later that they gave chase for a while, but nobody ever caught them. And it was kind of lucky that that branch caught my eye, because if I would have been running after them, I probably would have caught them, because I was basically the best runner we had. And in a way, I'm really happy that I didn't catch them, you know, because if we would have caught them, it would have been real bad. So after the monks got away, we regrouped back onto the road, and we continued down the road for a few more miles. As we came to the end of the road, we started to see sparse houses start to appear, and we started to feel a sense of joy and safety as we emerged once again back into civilization. We had made it. We had survived and conquered the road. We traveled for a ways until we finally found a payphone where we called our boy to come pick us up, who took us back to our car. When we got there, we removed the camouflage to find a note was tucked underneath the windshield wiper. When we read it, it simply said, "If we would have found you, we would have killed you." We assumed, of course, that it was from the monks. It was their last message left to us, warning us to never come back. But we had survived, so it didn't matter at that point, because we went home with a notch in our belt that we had completed our ninja mission, the greatest ninja mission. And that was a moment that will forever remain in my mind as the greatest adventure that I believe I've ever been on, and probably will ever be on in my life.
This next adventure story ain't as dramatic, but it's more terrifying for me personally. This happened about 2 years after the road. Now, like I said before, and I have to say again, a day doesn't go by that I don't think about this beyond shit, especially the monster. Only I witnessed it, and only I know that it was real. Other people might believe me, but you really would have to see it to fully believe me. I fucking saw it, and I'll never ever forget it. Please don't think I'm crazy by telling you this shit. The chances are, lots of people have probably seen something like this during their lifetime, but only I am stupid enough to run around telling people about it. Anyway, here it goes. The monster. There was this big hill about 3 blocks away from my mom's house in Ferndale. Everybody sledded down it in the wintertime. It was next to a wooded park behind an elementary school. I was living at my mom's house, and I was on a super workout kick because I wanted to try wrestling for real. I was wrestling here and there at the time, so I was constantly trying to stay in shape. I was in this weird phase where I would be comfortable in bed and something in my head would tell me, get out of bed right now and run to the top of that hill, because you never know when your house is gonna catch on fire and you're gonna have to come right out of a dead sleep and save your kids or something. It seemed like it was wearing on me, and when you most got comfortable, you would have to be most prepared to just up and ninja out and boogie all of a sudden. Just like when I was a little kid and that guy my mom was seeing decked my ass when I was sleeping naked. I should have been ready for anything. And now I was preparing myself to be ready for anything. When you least expect it, be ready to jump up and fucking fight. My brother was in the army by this time, so I was thinking he's probably going through some tough shit like this every night. Why shouldn't I? So listening to that voice in my head, getting out of bed and running down a few blocks and up that hill was like my own version of basic training. Night after night, I would just be about to fall asleep, thinking how comfortable I was in my bed, and then bam! Boom! I would have to do it. Some voice in my head would tell me, Joe, if you're the shit, right now you really want to train to be a true warrior, run up that hill. And I would jump up, run out of the house with my dog lady, run down the block, turn the corner, run down that block, and all the way up the fucking hill yelling, Ultimate Warrior! Now here's a quick side note. Believe me, yelling Ultimate Warrior had absolutely nothing to do with the wrestler Ultimate Warrior, even though the wrestler Ultimate Warrior was around at that time, and he was awfully fresh and very energetic. If you follow wrestling, then you know the Ultimate Warrior was definitely the shit. But for me, yelling Ultimate Warrior had nothing to do with the wrestler. It was just something I felt. Think of that term. Ultimate Warrior. It just means power. We loved yelling that. Me and my brother would yell that before he left for the army, and I continued the tradition alone. Ultimate Warrior! I'd get to the top of the hill night after night, spread my arms, and scream as loud as I could, Ultimate Warrior! The craziest part was that it would always be around 3:30 in the morning when I did this. Then I'd turn around, run back home, and go back to bed in peace. It was a weird-ass thing. Maybe it was my own current insanity in its own young age torturing me. One night, my the first girlfriend I ever had, Karen, was over at my house, and we were watching the Arsenio Hall show. I walked her to her car that night, and it was one of those nights where you look up and see the clouds whipping by super fast. It was a full moon, and the clouds were just speeding through the sky. I said goodnight, but for some reason, I was worried about something. I could feel it in my stomach. I watched her car drive all the way down the street and turn onto the main road. That was the first time I ever did that. But the whole fucking night seemed eerie, so I felt like I should watch her. Then I went back upstairs and got in my warm, comfortable bed and laid down like, fuck yeah. Then it began. I was arguing with myself again. Man, you've got to do this. You got to run out of the house. You did it every night this week. There's no reason for you not to do it tonight on this extra cold and scary stale-ass night. You've proven yourself 1,000 times already. Do it tonight. Tonight's the ultimate night. That fucking voice in my head. However, it was like, Joe, if you do it on this night, you don't have to do it for a whole week. You'll have schooled it harder than anybody else you ever knew if you just do it tonight. Do it tonight and you're the best. Boom, that was it. I called my dog lady and we were out the fucking door. God, I wonder what happened to that part of me now. Now I'm just lazy fucking bum laying in bed. Nothing will get me out of bed. No kind of motivation will get me out of that fucking bed. Once I'm in it for good. I don't give a fuck if the house burns down around me. I'm staying in that bed. It was about 3:30 a.m. and here I was, running as fast as I could with my dog at my side. I trucked down the block, around the corner, and all the way up that fucking hill. Once again, for the 20th night in a row, I raised my arms apart, turned around and yelled, Ultimate Warrior! As loud as I possibly could. This night was on some whole other shit though. Right in the middle of ultimate war, a giant gust of freezing cold wind blew me back. My eyes instantly filled with water from the coldness. Something, either the wind or the cold, something was holding me back. I was filled with chills just like I am right now telling you this. I had to conquer it. I raised my arms again and yelled, Ultimate Warrior! As loud as possible. Then, to To super school it, I grabbed my fucking dog, got behind her, and raised her paws up facing the wind, and yelled it again. My dog thought I was crazy, but we were yelling, "Ultimate Warrior!" I was scared though. Something was wrong. The wind had slapped me too hard for it to be natural. I ran down the hill and halfway down the block, and then I stopped to catch my breath. Winded as fuck. I finally felt safe. Besides my dog and I, there was something else there. I could sense it. I turned around and looked toward the end of the block, through the patch of trees under a streetlight. At first, I thought it was a giant branch falling from the wind or something, but this shape kept moving. It was just walking through the patch of woods, lit up by the streetlight. Then it stopped, as if it noticed me. We stood there, both motionless, looking right at each other, with only one city block between us. It was only a second-long stare down, but it felt like an hour of pure terror on my end. Booyah! Then it took off, through the trees, right at me. Now listen, y'all, I call it a monster because it wasn't a dog or a person or anything like that. It was a fucking monster. Its legs were straight and it got wide at the bottom where its feet would have been, like it had bell-bottom pants or something. Its arms were long as hell and they hung all the way down to its knees. It wasn't a fresh-ass Hollywood-looking monster or anything like that, but it was gonna fuck me up. It was a fuck-me-up monster. Nonetheless, it ran out from under that light completely, and I could see it was taller than the stop sign next to it, running with its long-ass arms swinging. Each step looked like he cleared about 10 feet of ground. Now, God bless America, as Joey would say. I was fucking gone. I was outie like a bullet. I turned around and I guarantee you I beat any speed record set by man. Any Carl Lewis or Ben Johnson or Robert the Bruce ever set. I was running so fucking fast, I remember my toes were just straight up skipping off the cement. They were barely touching the ground. My first thought was to run up on people's doors and start banging. Then I thought, no, I'll be dead. What are they gonna do for me? By the time they come to the door, I'll be fucking dead. Before I knew it, I had run around the corner, up my block, and my dog wasn't nowhere to be found. I didn't care about my life at that point. My dog meant more to me than anything else, and I was willing to die for him. I stopped running, turned around, and frantically yelled, "Lady!" A half second later, she came flying around the corner like she'd seen the monster too. She was running faster and yelping louder than me. With my dog safe, I wanted to live again. I wasn't willing to die anymore. Fuck that. I was back to running at light speed again. I got to my house and laid down behind the couch underneath the window. I was so fucking scared. I was gonna scream for my mom to wake up, but once again, what's my fucking mom gonna do? Shoo the monster away with a broom? I just laid there holding my dog under the window getting ready to die. I didn't want to move out of fear it was outside and it would see me moving in the house and therefore know where I was. I slowly low-crawled army style and reached up, knocking the phone off the wall. I called Nate the mech. "Nate, get the fuck over here right now!" 5 minutes later, Nate pulled up on my lawn with the sawed-off shotgun he found in the crack house after a police raid. I jumped in his car and told him, "Go, go, go!" He didn't know what the fuck was going on. He thought my phone call was about some fighting shit again. We went to his house, and I stayed awake another 40-something hours in a row after that. No lie, y'all. I told him all about it. I don't know if Nate ever believed me, but he could see by the look in the eyes and the fucking pale in my face without clown paint that I was fucking terrified. The blood was gone from my face and I looked like Michael Jackson. I was just fucking screaming scary. The story here isn't about what I actually saw or what happened to me, because 999 people out of 1,000 are not gonna believe me. I can just hear Maxim magazine now. So let me just try and explain what it was I might have saw. My brother Rob had two theories of his own which made the most sense. Number one is this explanation. It was the one that I believe explains what happened. Now, I know what I saw, and I know that it was from the beyond. It was pure magic. Here goes the believer's explanation. Because Michigan is so famous for being old Indian territory, that hill I kept running up might have actually been an ancient Indian burial ground of some kind. So by me running up there every night and screaming the words, ultimate warrior and meaning it from the heart, I might have unknowingly challenged some kind of warrior spirit. By me doing this night after night after night, perhaps it had finally had enough and came to do battle with me. Once it saw me run like a feeble bitch-ass coward, it realized I was only a weak-ass mortal human and it left me alone. That's the first explanation of what the fuck it probably was. Number two, this is the more logical explanation for you haters out there. I hate this explanation because it's the one everybody chooses to go with, and to me it's the one that's probably the most bullshit. But the people who live near that hill probably got woken up by me yelling that ultimate warrior shit every fucking night. Maybe they got pissed off about it. So maybe some guys decided to get back at me by making a giant monster costume to scare me with. Maybe the people making the costume had great skills and major monster making effects in their basement. So I guess maybe, just maybe, they decided to go ahead and spend $10,000 or $20,000 on the gag and really do it up. Because the monster I saw somehow stood taller than a fucking stop sign and it ran faster than a car to chase me down. Yet, most people would just say it was rather a joke that somebody played on me. Hey, if that's the case, then that was a damn good fucking joke. Damn good, because I still got the poop stains in those drawers wherever they're at. When something like this happens to you, then you realize how much more there is to life than meets the human eye, and how insignificant everything really is. When something from out of this world chases you like that, you realize how much more there is really going on out here. Pretty much every time I'm depressed about something, like a record flopping or something, I think about that. I think about the monster, and I realize how small my problems actually are, and what I'm really gonna have to face when I die. Then the adventure is really on. When you die and cross over to the beyond, that's when shit really gets poppin'.